that's their strategy. Basically, it's to control the culture, and there's no better way to control the culture than by controlling the language.
Sure.
And it's completely different to uh, say that there are certain words that you cannot say, certain words that create a certain discomfort, and to say that there's certain words that you have to say. And that's why Jordan Peterson got into that controversy,
Hmm.
got into
Like in that
that
famous
scandal.
first
That's how he
video.
got famous, because
Right.
he was opposing Bill C-16 from Canada. He basically analyzed the bill that talked about pronouns, and like that you had to call people by their preferred pronouns.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you could suffer like a punishment of like
Yeah, legal punishment
legal.
for it.
Yeah, you could suffer legal punishment for calling someone a different pronoun, or not calling them, or
To
refusing to
use their
call to use their
preferred.
preferred pronouns. Yeah.
It's
But he
pronouns,
so
but the reason why he's saying pronoun is because in Portuguese it's pronome.
oh yeah, yeah. Pronouns,
Noun. Because they're noun,
pronoun, the
pronoun.
pronoun.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, so he analyzed the bill,
Hmm.
and he realized that it was this much about transgender questions matters, and this much about speech and language regulation.
Hmm.
So he was like, wait a second, this is not doing anything for the trans community. It's not doing them any good. This is just about regulating speech.
Right.
It's about uh, legislating and regulating speech, and saying you have to say this, or you have to do this, you have to do that. And I feel like the government loves to do that. They love to use something as an excuse, like a social issue, as an excuse to legislate and control. And therefore, put barriers, like it's almost like they're fechando o cerco. How do you
Yeah,
say
like
that?
they're closing
You know?
the circle. They're trying to like
Yeah.
move the herd to a certain position, certain place.
They're trapping us,
Yeah.
basically.
Hmm.
And we are, because we don't realize that, and it's always under this benign pretext. Like it's under this, okay, we're doing something good for the minorities, or we're doing something good for the world, for nature, ecology, or whatever. Like we're protecting the world by doing this. If you talk about how do you say that, ecological issues.
Ecological issues, yes.
But there's another name that is more
um,
commonly used, because I'm thinking in Portuguese right now.
what are you trying to say?
It's like essas questões like global warming, that kind of stuff,
Right, right, right. Those
Yeah.
are like all ecological issues. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, anyways, I feel like they use that. They like uh, to make problems seem bigger than they actually are, in order for them to control more and to legislate. And
But what happens when the problems are real
there is
problems?
no, I'm not
You
saying
know.
there's not a problem, but I it just it makes me go like, huh, when I see politicians um saying that the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't do anything. Like, I don't think that's an objective truth.
Well,
Like when it comes to, you know,
global warming.
global warming issues and that kind of stuff.
Well, I would, this is not a new subject, global warming,
Hmm.
and we're getting a little bit sidetracked because we're talking about free speech. But
Yeah, but do you know, I was saying like the ability that they have to legislate and control,
yeah, but that's what a lot of people
and
do,
and increase
legislate
the bureaucracy of processes
processes.
processes. um and they do that by saying we have a problem, and we have to create certain regulations here to deal with this problem. But when you realize what they're doing, they're putting all these other regulations. It's like that Bill 16,
Mhm.
C-16. It was this much about uh, the trans community and this much about language, about regulating language. So it's
And
dangerous. Like we have to keep an eye on those things. And
sure,
I'm glad for people like Jordan Peterson that actually took the time to read the whole thing and went forward. And he's an eloquent, intelligent guy, and he was able to you know to
right.
to go against it in a good way, in a effective way. And I don't think they passed that bill in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways,
But there's a lot to unpack.
yeah,
I would, what's the end game of people, like these lawmakers? What are they trying to accomplish? Like, because I feel like it's really easy to make a jump in this thought experiment or thought exercise. Oh, now we're about to become like this.
power and control, and
Yeah. So, like, is that what the politicians are trying to do? Just to
yeah.
control the masses and become like dictators and like dissolve the parliament and just become one authoritarian figure? Is that because that feels
No, they're
like,
they're
be
trying to.
careful with this scenario, be careful with this situation, because this is where we're going to end up if we're not careful. And I'm like, okay, right. And then it was really easy to see a figure that was not on the left that became like this all powerful person that wouldn't accept no for an answer or defeat for an answer. Everything was an external plot and conspiracy to undermine them, and that to me sounds like a very much of an authoritarian figure trying to grab onto power, right? And that does not come from the left at all. But of course I feel like we live in a country of laws, and most societies, they have their own set of laws. Depending on who you ask, you might say, "Oh, there's not enough freedom here, or there's too much oppression." But other people say, "Hey, this system actually works. There's this much freedom people should be allowed. Otherwise, they don't really function well, and then or like stuff starts breaking at the seams because um, I don't know, like because people have the freedom to go crazy, they will go crazy. And the example that's coming to mind why I'm saying this is the example of Singapore. Singapore has very tight legislation about most things, drug use, alcohol,
Yeah,
and the way and I have friends who work in Singapore, and it's like, I will take this any day because
Indonesia too.
it works, right? So it's like, okay, we're sacrificing a few freedoms and liberties to have a very efficient and functioning society, and it kind of like works for them. And sure, like, if you're with the system and not against it, of course you're always going to be on the grass is going to be a little bit greener on your in your front lawn, versus if you're trying to change the system, like, because of out of a principle. But what I don't see is these principles being applied in all spectrums of politics. Like, I feel like everybody's pulling, tugging on their side to trying to get whatever they want accomplished to happen. And in the United States, we have the Republicans and the Democrats, and I see a bunch of attempts to legislate a bunch of things that should also be freedoms. So if the left is legislating the freedom of speech, and, oh, you shouldn't be able to say these, a bunch of the Republicans are trying to legislate a bunch of things that you should be able to do or not do with your body, etc. So it's like, oh, we want people to live the way that I would want to live, rather than give the freedom of people of everything, right? Because it can devolve, and I use this word in under quotations, to, if you take all the laws away, it becomes an what's it called? It's the
Anarchism.
anarchism, which
Anarchism.
by definition, anarchism is not really the absence of laws. It's just like, or it is the absence of laws, but it's not necessarily a dysfunctional situation. It's more of a situation where people have their own civics and their own values set so well, you don't need
Yeah,
laws to tell them what to do.
I actually I don't know much about it, but the little bit that I heard about and read about on I don't know how you say it in English. It's anarcho capitalism.
Hmm.
Anarch
And
like,
narco-capitalism, I think you're nailing
yeah,
this.
it's basically the idea that human beings, they have this natural law, divine or natural law, and uh,
Again with the natural law.
the laws and they would just
Be an extension.
flourish spontaneously
Mm.
without needing a centralized power or a centralized government that would impose those laws, or everything would be basically privatized. um but yeah, I guess they would need a common ground, of course, like a social contract, in order to operate functionally as a society. But it's an interesting idea, and I think like there was an era in Italy where they actually had a model of society that operated under that more of a anarcho-capitalist capital. What's wrong?
Nothing, nothing.
Oh,
If I'm looking over there, I'm just checking that
I
everything is
thought it
still
was,
working.
yeah, I thought it was something like a
Ele-
sound, a noise, or
No,
something.
no, no, no. Unless I give a red flag, it should be
But I don't know
fine.
much about it. But apparently, there's like one society that operated for like 200 years under anarcho-capitalism, or something that resemble anarcho-capitalism in Italy, like back in centuries,
Hmm.
and the societies thrived and did really well under that kind of system. Um, According to this guy that I was listening to,
Yeah.
but
We need more evidence on that.
I would have to do some more research on it to be able to say, yeah, this is a good model, or